What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Agents of the Valley podcast. I'm Vin. This is my partner,
Julia.
Julia. And this is the podcast where we break down real estate, money, and mindset, especially here in the Bay Area, without any hype, without any pressure, and without trying to sell you something.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And Vin, what a great way to start off this. This is our first episode for 2026. Then the housing market forecast prediction that has been released by Lawrence Yin of the National Association of Realtors. He is the chief economist, and he has said some interesting things coming for this year. And after last year, I don't know about you, I'm very excited to see what this year is forecasted to bring.
You're right. So, what we wanted to talk to you, everybody here, about this episode was what are prices doing this year in 2026? So, if you're thinking about buying, if you're thinking about selling, this is definitely a good one to listen to. So that way you know what's people are predicting and what's going to be happening this year after kind of a crazy 2025, right?
Right, exactly, exactly. So he said in his video that he is forecasting that home sales will increase about 14%, give or take in either direction, depending on what market you are located in. On top of that, he said that he has used his models to get this prediction, and he's taking into account things like what will be the average mortgage rate in 2026, possibly, right? And I believe he referenced a 6% mortgage rate. He calculates that to see what is that lock in terms of affordability and ability to buy for buyers out there. And because of those numbers in that analyzation, he's coming up with that 14%, which I think is very hopeful for this year. How do you feel coming out of last year, Vin, with the activity, kind of how the market was, interest rates?
Feel like the past couple years, prices have pretty much like flatlined. Like we haven't seen crazy significant increases in pricing. And in fact, in some areas in the Bay, they've decreased. So it's interesting that Lawrence predicted, you said a 14%
Yeah, 14% increase in overall sales. And now he didn't translate
sales.
that
Okay.
into direct price appreciation and what he thinks that would do to price appreciation. As we know, price appreciation has slowed in the Bay Area for sure and in other markets throughout the country over the past few years. Although I will not say it's to the point that, everyone's hoping that the market crashes and, that unlocks all of these great deals, but it definitely has slowed to a more normalized appreciation rate.
Yeah, and to that point too, yeah, I think I saw something on Redfin about how there was like, at least in the Bay Area, maybe I gotta get these numbers right, but it was I saw something about like 900 homes being sold, um, the year before, like in 2024, and then in 2025 it was about only 700 homes. So it makes a lot of sense that with the way the market is going, that we'll probably see increases in inventory because there's all kinds of factors, but I think people are just mainly tired of waiting. Um, so
Yeah.
meaning like we've seen a decrease in the amount of home sales, and I think it's because of a lot of uncertainty, political and economically,
Yeah.
for the past few years. And now that it's like we're heading into year number 3 of this, people aren't willing to wait anymore. People have life events that are happening. Everybody who's been sitting on the fence. We talk we haven't talked a lot, but recently, but I know talking to you before, we've always had all these clients sitting on the fence,
Yeah.
right? And they can only sit on the fence for so long. So I think it makes a lot of sense what Lawrence Yun was saying and what you're kind of bringing up as far as more homes for sale.
Yeah, yeah, which I mean is a good thing. We have a shortage of housing here. So more inventory is great. It won't be enough. But if you are looking to buy, this gives you probably a little bit more ability depending on what your budget is, since mortgage rates are lower than what they were last year for the most part now. Now that could change as we progress through 2026, but that gives you a little more breathing room, and you're going to have, more options this spring as inventory comes onto the market. I mean, we have so many sellers who also saw what was going on over the past few years and decided, I'm going to hold off There's a lot of external factors going on affecting the market. I'm going to hold off. But like you said, life happens and you can only hold off for so long before, you need to make a move, right? You start kind of prioritizing what your goals are. I always say something like time. We could always make more money, but we can't make more time. And depending on what your situation is, you might just need to sell that property to get to where you need to go in this next phase of your life. So it'll be very interesting to see how the spring market reacts to that. What have you been seeing on your end, Vin, in terms of activity that you're seeing on the market?
I'll tell you this much. It's January 22nd as we're recording this. This was the first year, like right after the holidays, in a couple years that I've had. This is the first time in a few years where right after the holidays, my phone was blowing up. I'm not sure if you got the
Mhm,
same thing, but
mhm,
some of the clients that I was working with before the holidays that took a break, other clients that were uh interested but not really serious, all of a sudden are starting to get serious.
mhm.
So I know that's not really concrete data, but for someone who is like me, who's not like a prospecting agent who's like calling everybody and like, hey, are you looking to buy or sell? I know you're not that way too, but
Yeah.
basically saying that I don't really call anybody. And and normally, clients call me, right? And I mean, the last couple of years have been slow from that aspect. And like I said, the first time in a couple years, I felt like, wow, there's multiple people calling me and saying, "Okay,
Mhm.
this year is the year now. We wanna start looking to buy." So, anecdotally, I feel like market's gonna get hot again. What
Yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
what
I agree with you, Ben. Normally, we say kind of like Super Bowl weekend is like peak time. It feels like it started to ramp up a lot quicker this year. We did open house on a Milpitas listing that we had this past weekend. I mean, we probably had close to 30 groups every day through there. So that's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the open houses. And a lot of I mean, just to give some context, it was a single family home. It was priced under 1.2. So it was very entry level
is this in
price point.
Milpitas?
Yeah, for this particular neighborhood in Milpitas. So great price point for, a first-time home buyer who's just starting out and wants to get a single family house, or maybe they're in a condo now. Condos become really tight space-wise, so now they're ready to take that next step. And we definitely had those buyers coming in. I definitely had questions about, are you guys going to set an offer deadline? All of those underlying questions that we start to as agents assess as intent, right? Then, like, okay, is this person probably going to write an offer? Those questions were coming up multiple times in different conversations with different buyers. So I would definitely say that it does seem like the market is reacting and picking up in terms of going into the busy spring season, which is great news for sellers and then just helpful news for buyers. So if you are getting into that position where you want to buy and this is the time frame you want to do it in, if you can, then being very efficient with having a great local agent. As I say, I feel like I say that all the time, knowing what's happening in the micro markets that you're targeting and understanding how you can move effectively into a single family home. So I'd say that's what I'm seeing on my end.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense. I guess as a buyer, let's just pretend from this aspect, if I'm a buyer and I'm interested in buying right now, if I were to ask you, Julia, is this year a good year to buy finally? What would you say to that?
I would say it depends,
Yeah,
right? It depends,
always.
how, right? That's always the answer, It depends where are you along in that process? Have you talked to a lender? Have you, where are you at? Because depending on how you answer those questions as a buyer, I'm going to understand, okay, does it seem like a good opportunity window for you? Or maybe it's, maybe now's not the right time, but here are some helpful, you know, pieces of advice that can help get you ready for when that next window comes and you are able to move towards buying a house. You're able to do that and if efficiently and effectively,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Everybody's situation's different. Asking that question definitely depends on your situation and how far along are you? Like, are you, um, you know, just, oh, I want to buy a house just because you think that's what you're supposed to do, versus like you mentioned, you've got all your ducks in order with your financing. You have the need as a life event. You've been keeping your eye on home prices, and you've already got that pre-approval, so you know that you can afford. So definitely, it depends on your situation. The reason why I was asking you this is because One of those phone calls that I got at the beginning of the year was from a past client who I'm helping manage a rental basically. He moved out of his first house that I helped him buy, and he's renting that property out now. And now that property is their lease is ending. So it's a townhome right there in San Jose on the border of Santa Clara. You know where Santa Clara University is, and like
Mhm.
we used to call it
Yeah.
Cluck U, but it's like
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
because
I know that area.
Cluck U is a legendary chicken wing spot that sells chicken wings or
Chicken
hot
wings.
wings, but they
Yeah.
do a 911 challenge basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to do this 911 challenge, you gotta sign a waiver and everything. So it was, back in the day, it was crazy. But uh, in any case, before I venture off, it's in this area. It's a townhome, and the lease is ending. So my client's like, "Well, hey, Vin, I'm renting right now, and then my current rental that you're helping me with is expiring. Is it a good time to sell? But I don't want to rent anymore either, so I want to buy. So what should we do in this situation, right?" And what
Mhm.
I basically told him is that, selling, if you're thinking about selling and you're thinking like how it was maybe like 3, 4, 5 years ago, and get that out of your mind because meaning it was really hot back then, right? But now as you mentioned, we're probably going to get more homes on the market, which isn't really going to help a seller's situation, but it's not
Mhm.
like prices are crashing either.
Right.
So that's kind of another thing. Like I was telling him, like it might take 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks to even sell, and he was kind of like getting a little bit concerned or discouraged by that. But I was
Mhm.
trying to tell him prices aren't crashing, and if you think about it, like the average days on market outside of California is like 2 months. You know what I mean? So
I know.
for a seller to be selling a home sitting on it for like a couple weeks up to a month, it's not as concerning.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so basically saying that, but the other side to that is, he's not in a rush to sell, so that's a good thing. But
Yeah.
what he is dealing with is that he needs to buy, and the life event because he's renting and he wants to have an actual single family home because that's what he's renting right now.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Well, what's gonna if prices aren't gonna go that much up, then maybe I shouldn't buy. I shouldn't be in a rush to buy either." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, that's pretty logical." But at the same time, this is one of the only times that I've seen in the
Mhm.
last recent years where it's actually like the best time to buy. So, it's kind of
Yeah.
like a tricky situation, but if you are trying to avoid like prices going up and like
Like trying to hedge
unpredictable,
it. Yeah, like
yeah,
trying
try
to
to
hedge
head,
against it, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then maybe it is a good time to buy because if you're financially sound, you need it and you don't want to have to deal with competition or higher prices even later because that's what we think might happen down the line. We don't know, but it's trending that way. It's possible. And then, yeah, I think it felt kind of weird for me to say, but I was like, yeah, maybe you should buy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like to think about it this way too, Ben. I like to think if it turned into a buyer's market tomorrow and, rates were good and, it was just like a great time to buy by that definition of loan, right? So great interest rates, market slowed, it turned to a buyer's market, pricing went down. It really wouldn't matter if a person is still not in a position to buy, if their finances aren't right, if it doesn't make sense for them, what their future goals are, right? So it's kind of like you said, like you really have to take like a holistic approach, listen to what your client is telling you, support them with that market information of what's happening in real time and guide them, right? In that advisory role that you have with your client. So that way, they can then kind of decide, like you said, if they want to hedge against pricing going up and that's their main concern and they're okay with selling their property as is, it might take longer and they're in a position to do both kind of simultaneously, then great, more power to them. Then it probably is a great time for them to get into the market right now, right?
Yeah, I think I agree with that sentiment. Like, if you're not ready, you're not ready. But if you have been waiting, it might be the time because there's so many factors that you're not able to control. Like,
Yes.
everybody's waiting for the interest rates to go down. Right?
Yeah.
And leading into that, how interest rates go down is if the Fed thinks our economy is not doing so great.
Right.
And that means either lots of layoffs or wages aren't growing or something catastrophically that's happening where, we might be in another recession and we're not increasing our GDP, right? So,
Mhm.
all that to say that if the Fed feels like these economic pressures are high, they're gonna lower the rate. And everybody who is in the bucket, like you were saying, that was ready and willing but waiting, that's the first signal for them to jump in. And once the rates do come down a little bit, you can bet that there's gonna be so many people that are just gonna jump in just because, okay, this is my time. This is the dip. I've been waiting for the right time and
Mhm.
now it is. So that's gonna kind of mess around with other buyers a little bit who are in the market because it's gonna make it more competitive basically.
Yeah, make it more competitive. And I think that there's just kind of like a snowball effect, right? Because once you start seeing interest rates decline, stabilize, decline, look more favorable, it's very interesting from a psychological standpoint. You can be doing an open house and you'll have, like I said, you'll have 30 groups come through for the past 3 days. How many of them will put in an offer? We'll see before I feel like we could kind of gauge what the percentage would be that we would get offers on average. But because the market has kind of reset a little bit and taken on a new sense of normalcy, we're yet to see or understand what that's going to equate to in terms of offers on houses this spring. But back to what I'm trying to get at is that you have more people walking through that door. So whether they're pre-approved, whether they're window shoppers, their neighbors, they're all coming through, and this kind of adds to that psychological effect that happens on the buyer pool, that they're seeing all this activity and all of this interest, right? And so it just kind of creates more of a buzz, and that's why it's important to talk to agents and see, what does this really mean? Right? What does this mean? I love the house. I love the house. I want to put an offer, and so on.
That house you're talking about, just a nice, really good example to do. But are you guys? Did you guys set an offer deadline?
Yes, so it did. It went on the market last Thursday. I went through broker tour, all the open houses, did everything like that. And there was an offer deadline set. I believe we took offers on it. I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Nancy was handling the offers on that, but I know she got multiple offers.
So
Multiple
that
offers.
so
Yes.
that kind of proves what we're saying. I mean, this is just one example, but I mean, it's an affordable home in a desirable area. Milpitas is kind of like a great central place for people who are working on the peninsula or in Fremont or in the South Bay because it's right there in the middle and it's got, 237 and
Yeah,
Central Expressway and
absolutely.
all that. But when you were mentioning all that, it reminds me of this YouTube video that I was watching. It's by this guy called Clear Value Tax. He talks a lot about the economy, but he said
Hmm.
something super interesting, which was our inflation rate at the moment is like at 3% or something like that,
Hmm.
and our wages are only growing. They're flatlining or not even growing. They're like maybe 1%, but it's not as inflation is going. So basically,
Yeah.
our dollar is playing catch up. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
To
Because everything
inflation.
is
Yeah.
getting more expensive, inflation, but our wages and the money that's coming in isn't keeping up with that. So basically, we're losing money. Like
Hmm.
he was talking about how if inflation's at 3% and you ask for a raise, but it's not at 3% or higher, then even when you get a raise, you're losing money still.
Hmm.
It makes a lot of sense why that Milpitas property and why some of these other properties that are great pricing wise and location wise are hot is because, like you were saying, it's a hedge. If the dollar is going down, these tech people, they're smart. They know, they see their stocks every day. If their
Yeah.
dollar is going down, but their stocks and their gold and their assets are going high, you might as well put that into a house as well
Hmm.
because it's limited dirt around the Bay Area right now,
That's for sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
So
we know that it's over time real estate is a profitable investment. And we know that because the wealthiest people in the world buy real estate. Like what more evidence do we need to show that, depending on what your goals are, if you're buying it for yourself or you're buying it as an investment property, all the calculations on your return and whatnot may be a little bit different, but we know that over the long term, you can count on getting a positive return on that investment. And I think it's really important for people to know too. We kind of talked a little bit about the slowing of price appreciation in the past few years. Just because price appreciation slows doesn't mean that it stopped. So that's one very important factor to remember. We came out of a time during COVID, even a little bit post COVID, when rates were really low. Affordability was unlocked for a lot of people where it was just crazyville and you were seeing properties appreciate in the double digit numbers
Great point.
for a while. And that's not normal. And that's what people should understand is that when you start to have a more normalized market, property appreciation numbers are more between, 3 to 5% is what you can kind of gauge as being the range, right?
Mhm. I totally agree. Yeah, there was a stat that I saw that prior to 2019, or like from 2019 on uh to now, prices have appreciated 40%.
Yeah.
And just in the last 2 years, prices have only appreciated like, a couple percent, or like 1%, basically,
Mhm.
around like overall around 1%. Like a lot of
Mhm.
places have flatlined, a lot of places have appreciated, but average price appreciation is around like 1%
Mhm.
in the last couple years. But if you think about that, 2019 was just 6 years ago, or seven
Yeah.
years ago. And for homes to appreciate within 7 years 40%, I mean, it's proof, like you said over there, over the long term, if you can hold on to it, the appreciation is gonna come back. Just because it's slow appreciation the last couple of years doesn't mean it's a bad time to buy or sell. It
Right.
just means
Or a bad
it's
investment.
yeah,
It doesn't mean
exactly.
that at all.
It just means there's an opportunity now. So, yeah, I definitely just agree with that point with what you said.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I guess with that, what's your market prediction? What do you think is gonna happen?
Based upon, I don't have a crystal ball. So I'll say that. I always tell everybody if you want to ask me what the housing market's going to do, I have no idea. And if you find somebody who knows for sure what it's going to do, please call me. We need to talk. Because I'm not psychic and I don't think that anybody else is. What I think, based upon what I'm seeing now, is I think it will be a busy spring. I think timing will be extra important. So if you are thinking about selling and you want to take advantage of this uptick that we're seeing, I think you start that process now with an agent, interview an agent, get a listing agent, and get a plan together to get onto the market so you can capitalize on this uptick on activity. If you're thinking about buying, you do the same things in terms of getting with a great agent, looking at your pockets where you're interested in your price range, and you remain flexible. And I think you're going to have a lot more opportunity present itself to you this year, especially in comparison to last year. What would you say, Vin?
I agree with your points. I think, if you're thinking about selling or buying, because we don't know what's gonna happen with the market later on, meaning we don't know how hot it's going to be again and when it's gonna be again. So instead of timing the market, get yourself ready. So that way, when you are ready, whatever you gotta do, you can do it because like I said, we don't know what's gonna happen with the market. It can be delayed. The hotness can be delayed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, world events could happen. Something could
We're
happen tomorrow, right? And just
exactly.
completely change the trajectory. So, timing the market, like we said, no one's a psychic, but what you can control is getting ready, right?
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and I agree with that sentiment, so it's so funny that you say the crystal ball thing. I feel like real estate agents, we all have the same sayings, but I didn't realize it. Like, I always tell my clients about that.
That's funny. Well, I love that because I feel like when you first get your license, and this is kind of like real estate stuff or real estate agent stuff, everyone likes to ask you, like quiz you. So how's the market? What's it going to be doing? Do you think it's this? Do you think that? And truly, I feel like the more longer I stay in this position, the more I realize the agents that come that are straightforward with you and say, I don't know what the market is going to do because I'm not psychic, but I can tell you based upon the market activity I'm seeing and projections, this is kind of likely what we're looking at. Those are the agents who are more upfront and transparent because nobody has a crystal ball. And if they do, they need to call me because I need a crystal ball.
I tell my clients the same thing. If I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be doing real estate.
I know,
Or I
right?
would be, but, it'll be different.
That's a good one. I like that.
But I
Yeah.
totally agree. Any Asian who is, making bold predictions, just know that he's in the same boat or he or she is in the same boat as everyone else, which is they don't really know either.
They don't know. They don't know. They're hoping it's always going to be a good time to buy or sell real estate, but there's just too many things that go into it that are really out of our control,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that's a great pin to stop there. I think it was really
Yeah.
helpful for people who are looking to buy and sell what the market's going to be doing this year. Anything else you want to kind of bring up before we end it
Yeah.
here?
No, I think this is a good point. I mean, I hope whoever's watching this found it helpful. I always hope that anybody who watches any of our videos could take one or two nuggets, take it and run with it to help them be successful in whatever their long-term or short-term goals are with real estate. I am on Instagram, Vin's on Instagram. We also have our contact information in the caption and in the videos. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we can't wait to see you on the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging with us, guys. We'll talk soon. See ya.